everyone. I'm Kathy Denman, and I want to welcome you to Denman's Den. This is my first YouTube broadcast, and I also have a page on Facebook called Denman's Den, and I'm trying to expand my platform a little. And for this first broadcast, I'd like to help you get to know me a little bit better, because then it will, I think, give you a better foundation for my writing as well as the things that I share on this channel. So let me begin by sharing with you that one of my favorite hobbies is creating fabric art, and I use needle and thread, whether it is in embroidery or cross stitch or latch hooking or crocheting. My art is a constant reminder that in the tapestry of human existence, every thread is unique, and it is pulled through the material of my life and yours too. From the subtle stitching together of places, people, experiences, dreams, and unexpected twists and turns. So this story that I'm about to share is kind of the stitching together in long and short stitches of my own winding journey. It's a brief history, perhaps, compared to my 70 years of life. There's a lot more that I could say than I will say, but it is one rich in discovery, in a lot of pain and suffering, and also in challenge and in growth. My life began in Stockton, California, on August 23rd, 1955. When I was a child, Stockton was a small, quiet town in Northern California, and my life was filled with the echoes of family dinners, playing outside all day long, the gentle rhythm of daily routine. I remember riding my bicycle through familiar streets, going to Mass on Sunday mornings, playing games with my younger brother and sister and with the neighborhood kids, and spending long summer days in the public library, losing myself in the wonder of books and their stories. And probably one of the most poignant memories I have is the gentle sounds and smells of my mother percolating coffee early each morning. School days, like your school days, were filled with friends and learning, and I attended a Catholic school, and it was the same kind of thing there, filled with friends and learning. And the classrooms, I remember their chalk-dusted air and the creaky wooden floors that smelled of pine-scented polish, and the old wooden desks and chairs with compartments underneath to put your books and things, and these big, tall windows in each classroom that for me became my first windows into a larger world that my imagination was only just beginning to discover. In that school, I learned reading and writing and mathematics, history and religion, music, science, even Latin. I had probably 4 or 5 years of Latin while I was attending the Catholic school. So I also learned to question and to discover and to dream. As the years kind of stitched their tapestry into my life, there were certain interests that began to emerge that I realized that I had a real focus on, and one of them had to do with my dad. He was a member of the St. Vincent de Paul Society at our the Catholic church that we attended. And, you know, I used to love to go with him from the time I was about 6 years old. When he would go shopping and he would buy all kinds of food, fill up the shopping cart, and then take all that food to needy families in our church as part of the work of the St. Vincent de Paul Society. And that just meant so much to me, and I really enjoyed going with him and helping him do that. And when I got older and had some of my own money, I helped him do the shopping, financially. And he took me on those trips with him all the way through my high school years, and it was just something that I treasured. And another thing that he did was he took me with him. He was the head usher at our church, and he one of his jobs was to come early before Mass, and he would put out the hymnals and the missals and the offering envelopes and the baskets for the offering collection. And I would help him with all that work, and I used to really enjoy just going with him and helping at church like that. It was kind of unusual for a child my age to enjoy that, but I really did. And at that time, right around that time, I also discovered that music captivated me very much. And when I was 12 years old, I decided to learn how to play the clarinet. And around that same time, I decided to join the choir at church. And so music became a big part of my life from that point on. And as I previously mentioned, I did love to read. And maybe kind of as a result of that, I had a teacher who, when I was about 12 or 13, she thought that I wrote well, so she encouraged me when I got into the 9th grade and could take some electives to maybe choose a writing class. So I decided to go ahead and take her advice, and I chose a writing class, and lo and behold, I became editor of the school newspaper, and began to have a feeling that maybe, I could communicate through writing. Although, even though I did do that, it wasn't until much later in my life that I got some encouragement that really caused me to look at it, take it seriously, and realize that maybe I could actually do this and people might read it. So, school wasn't the only place where I learned and grew and discovered things that I enjoyed doing. At home, my mother, she taught me how to sew. And I was about 8 years old when she taught me. And by the time I was 9 years old, I was making all my own clothes. And I actually continued to do that all the way through high school and all the way through college and into my adulthood for a short time. And even though I don't make all my own clothes anymore, I still do sew a lot, and I can, people ask me to do different projects for them. I can usually make whatever they ask me to do. So, thanks to my mother, and God bless her for, being such a good teacher and starting me at such a young age that now, I can really enjoy sewing as a wonderful hobby, a creative outlet for me. So needless to say, family and mentors, in my opinion, were crucial for me in figuring out the things that I was interested in and what I might be actually good at, and their encouragement in taking me with them to do service work or in attending my music concerts or in just believing in me. It really made all the difference in my life, and as I mentioned earlier, things like writing, where I still had some self-doubt, Now Vaughn is in my life as my life partner, and he also saw something in my writing that he felt might be worth sharing with more people than just me and him. So he encouraged me to maybe send some things that I wrote off to be published, and I did, and they were published. And so even at this point in my life, the mentoring of others and the encouragement of others is still very important in how I grow as a person, and in how I use gifts that I may not even realize are, useful, or that I may even have doubts about being useful. So, even now, I can still point to the encouragement and support of people that believe in me and are mentors for me. And I've learned from that growth as a person depends, I think, not so much on having certain talents and using them. I mean, that's important, but it's not really the basis for personal growth. The basis for personal growth is discipline. It's dedication. It's curiosity. It's the willingness to try and fail, and then pick yourself up and try again after you fail. After I finished high school, I attended the University of the Pacific. And at the university, I was challenged in many ways to think critically and to question things, and to look more deeply into things and not just accept things at face value. I was also challenged to collaborate with others and to work more as a team, and become part of the group setting, whether it was in orchestra or in choir or in any other group that I might be in, and to expand my understanding of the world. I was in college at a time when Vietnam was going on, when people that I knew were in Vietnam fighting, and I was, I was part of the protests that happened on campus, and I, was not particularly in favor of the war, and was also watching what was going on with Watergate, and with civil rights issues, and the assassinations of Martin Luther King Jr. and Robert Kennedy also had an impact on me and my life. And I remember starting to engage new ideas and to meet many different people from many different backgrounds, and I started to see the world from many different perspectives, and it helped. At that time, I think it really helped me to develop a more open mind to opinions different than mine, cultures different than mine, people whose backgrounds were different than mine, and to learn from them, and to see the best that was in them, and sort of incorporate it into my life as a person. The other main thing that happened at the University of the Pacific is that I met Marshall Denman, and we fell in love, and we married when I was 20 years old and he was 21 years old. After we both graduated, we moved to Rockland, California, where Marshall was, he became a music teacher in the nearby town of Roseville, and I began working as a music tutor of woodwinds and piano, and in the evenings I played in the Sacramento Symphony, played the clarinet in the symphony. And then, of course, as is the case in most marriages, after a couple of years, I became pregnant, and we had a child, and our son Paul was born, and we bought a house. We were well on our way to establishing a family and building a life together. But no life is untouched by pain and suffering and the challenges that accompany it. Marshall became ill with pericarditis, which is an inflammation of the heart wall. And in those days, there wasn't a lot they seemed to be able to do for it. And after 11 months of illness and hospitalizations, Marshall died on a Friday morning in early October. He was 26 years old, and I was 25 years old. And our infant son was 11 months old. I had to sell our new home that we had recently purchased to pay for the funeral and the burial, and try to pay for the part of the hospital bill that the insurance didn't cover. And, I have to say those trials were among the most difficult of my life. And the obstacles seemed to loom larger than any hope that I had at the time. But it was during those times that I discovered the quiet strength of perseverance, hanging in there, and eventually things do get better. The ability to push forward even when the outcome is unknown and uncertain. I learned to accept the kindness of other people toward me, and I learned to extend it in return. This time of great loss and hardship for me, rather than it narrowing my world, expanded my empathy and deepened my understanding of the shared pain and suffering and loss of other people. And that was to prove very crucial in a few years into the future. Now let me go back just a bit, because the next stage of my life, I have to go back to early childhood to understand what happened at that point. From the time I can remember, I felt a calling into the ministry. And because I was a Catholic, everyone told me that I couldn't be a priest. I had to be a nun instead. And I do remember spending a couple of weeks at a local convent when I was about 12 or 13 years old. One summer, 12th or 13th summer, I can't remember, exploring that possibility. I stayed at the convent, but it didn't seem to be the call that I kept coming back to in my dreams and in my thoughts and in my heart. So after Marshall's death, that call was still, coming to me and even stronger in some ways. And so I decided to attend a Protestant seminary that was beginning to accept female students in the city of Chicago, Illinois, and I applied to that seminary and I was accepted. And, I was a little bit conflicted because I was, and in a sense, still am, that Catholic girl inside of me. But that sense of call to the priesthood never left me. And in 1983, I realized it probably wasn't going to happen in the church that I grew up in. So I took my 4-year-old son and I left for Chicago, and I attended that Protestant seminary. And although I enjoyed my studies in Greek and in Hebrew and in church history, counseling, spiritual formation, and theology, there was much discrimination and rejection, and I wasn't prepared for that at all, I have to say, even in the Protestant seminary. I'll give you an example, one that I'll never forget. When I was assigned my first pastoral internship, I stood up to preach the first homily that I was to preach on my internship, and 2/3 of the congregation walked out because they believed that no woman should be giving a homily from any church pulpit. And that was only one event of so much discrimination and mistreatment. In fact, too many events to count of that, and certainly too many for me to recount to you. But just that one gives you an idea of what I went through for years, to be honest. What I really had experienced a call to do and to be was a missionary in Latin America. I had a heart for that part of the world, and I really was hoping that after seminary I'd be able to go and serve. But again, just like with everything else, because of my gender, that opportunity was denied to me, so I didn't go. As a result, I have to admit that I had a great many battles with self-doubt, discouragement, and depression during those difficult years, as I tried to find, if God is calling me, where am I supposed to be and what am I supposed to do? And then came something that helped to give me some direction, and that was clinical pastoral education. Clinical pastoral education is basically the requirement for a Master of Divinity degree for any seminarian, regardless of their denomination, and it involves serving 3 or 6 months as a chaplain in a hospital, a nursing home, maybe as in a prison or some other place where you're doing some one-on-one counseling and visiting with people that are, well, they're going through some pain and suffering. So for me, I found my mission field, you might say, in hospital patient rooms. And I began to find a sense that I was living out some part of the call that God had given to me and that I experienced since childhood. So I became a hospital chaplain. And after several years as a chaplain, I became a prison chaplain as well. So I did that for a number of years. And I would say that I learned how to listen. And I learned to see more profoundly the unseen intricacies of suffering and of human suffering and pain, and how to utilize the sensitivity and compassion that was within me to bring companionship and love to other people. No, I'm not going to lie, the quiet battles with self-doubt, they still happened from time to time. But in those times, I discovered that I always had reservoirs of resilience and faith that kept me moving forward and trying to fulfill, the ministry that I found myself doing. So eventually, in the midst of all that, I came to Mexico. I came initially to help a friend who was an American who wanted to leave Mexico, and so I came to help her pack and move back to the United States. But it didn't quite happen that way. that sense of call that I had, that always whispered to me throughout the years, was drawing me again really powerfully to stay in Mexico. So I stayed for about 3 years. I learned Spanish. I made many, many friends. And I even worked in a public secondary school teaching English to ninth graders. Then when my dad turned 90 years old, I returned to California to be near him in case, he needed me or needed help. And so my mother had died many, many years before, in the early 1990s, and I knew that my dad was alone and that he might need me, so I moved back, and it was during that time that I pursued a second master's degree in psychology, and I worked in counseling addicts, as well as working part-time in a local church where I was the director of faith development for that church. And after a handful of years, my dad died in his mid-90s. And in the midst of all of those events, my son had grown up. He finished high school. He graduated university, and then he graduated law school, and he passed his bar exam. And in the midst of all that, he met, fell in love with, and married his wife, and they started a family. And I now have 2 beautiful grandchildren that are both teenagers now. And although they live really far away in Toronto, I love them more than words can express. And I miss them terribly. Life, of course, is not a straight line. We know that. There have been moments when uncertainty and fear returned, and when my plans had to be rewritten or redone, and I faced crossroads that I hadn't expected. One of the biggest ones was that I was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease in my early 40s. And at first, I just needed a pill every day to keep everything under control. And I hardly noticed that I even had it. It just wasn't even a problem, really. But as the years have passed, it slowly became more challenging to manage the disease. And with each new challenge, I had to draw upon the lessons that I'd already learned from the past of, seeking out support when I needed it from those around me. I also had to adapt. I had to learn new skills and find new passions to pursue. I have learned over the years that resilience is really not about the absence of difficulty. It's more about, finding the courage and the strength and the willingness to begin again when things get really difficult, to the point of having to change everything. As I have reflected on my story and sharing it with you, I am seeing, as we're talking, a life shaped by circumstances and by choices, by faith and by family, by calling and by crucible, by rejection and by renewal. There have been triumphs and disappointments and joy and sorrow and doubts and faith all through my life. But, through it all, I have grown and become, well, obviously older, but not just older, more compassionate, more attuned to the beauty around me, and not just beauty in nature, but the beauty of everyday life and the beauty in other people around me. And hopefully I've become a little wiser too. In a month, I will complete 70 years of life, and I look forward to the adventures yet to come, to the lessons that are waiting for me to learn them, and for the chance to continue growing as a person, and to sharing and making a positive difference in the lives of other people, and sharing with them, like I'm doing with you, the love that I have within me, that I do want to share with people around me. Though this account is but a brief history, although you might not have felt it was that brief, believe me, it was compared to what all that my life was full of. It does give you a foundation as to why I write, the things that I write, why I share what I share, and have the particular perspective that I have about, politics, music, art, Latin America, faith, life, and above all, about love. I want to thank you for listening to my story, and I would just ask you, please, to return to my channel, and please subscribe to it, and feel free to ask questions, and to comment, and to share anything that you want in the space underneath for comments and sharing and for questions. And I promise you that I will try to reply to as many of them as I possibly can. And again, please like and share my channel, and subscribe to it. And I wish you a very blessed day and evening, and I will see you next time here on Denman's Den. Thank you so much for being here. Bye.